Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome to another webinar, The Role of Application Performance on Customer Loyalty. This is actually the first of a new series of webinars that Sumo Logic has partnered with Techstrong on called the DevOps Insights Forum. The DevOps Insights Forum is a monthly open space for professionals to just chat about software development, delivery, and reliability. My name is Sam Fell, and today we have a fantastic program for you. Again, the role of application performance on customer loyalty. How are they intertwined? Well, 53% of the SREs out there say the number one application monitoring challenge is unified visibility across their stack. That digital transformation initiatives that they're going through are forcing these SREs to expand their observability boundaries to include more than just the back end, to include that digital experience and the business KPI data. So today we're going to talk about using data and analytics to understand that digital experience, the challenges and opportunities for data collection and analytics, and the practices and processes used to reduce toil and ramp reliability. And I'm joined by none other than Mitch Ashley from Techstrong. Mitch, how you doing today?
Great, Sam. Good to be with you. Good to be with the panel that'll be here today.
Awesome. So I'm seeing some folks already putting some things into the chat. I love it. We are doing this webinar. It's more of like a panel. There are some panelists, as you saw, who are going to be joining us after Mitch goes through a little bit of the data that we've collected. But we want to make this event something for our audience, for them to be able to engage with people who are experts in this field, ask questions. We also know that there's a lot of expertise on the other side of the webinar lens here. All the folks in the audience, you're practitioners, you've been through this. So please make sure that you're putting your ideas and thoughts into that chat. So speak up, be respectful, and also this is a brand new program. We're just launching it today, so welcome to the inaugural episode. If there's feedback on what we're doing, if you think we can make it better or serve the audience better, let us know. Now let's roll. I'm going to roll this over to Mitch, and he's going to talk about a poll that we ran to try and collect a little bit of data on what's actually happening out in the market. And we're going to ask you some questions as well. Mitch, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. We are going to do a couple audience polls here, and I'll put the first one up. So we'd love your participation. And by the way, feel free to jump in on the chat or whatever. And Techstrong Research did some of these polls to gather some data. So I'm starting this first one. Everybody should see an open poll. It says, what is your primary method of measuring? Your primary method of measuring application reliability is, and please jump on that poll. One of the things that we did, Sam, is we put these polls out on some social media and web platforms to get feedback from people. So I've got some data that we will share from those responses. And then in real time, we'll kind of add to that the responses that we're getting from our audience here today. So we have a lot of different perspectives on this.
Telemetry. Yeah.
Yes, real-time telemetry.
Yeah.
We'll adjust the aircraft positioning. So.
Well, I'm interested to see if they match, right? The audience that we have here, I'm assuming that it should line up.
Well, yeah, it we'll see. You never know about data. That's the thing about data, right? Okay, great. Well, let's. We've got some responses here. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, and I'll share with you the results of that as well as our research. So this is done by Techstrong Research, analyst firm. And the answer to this, what your primary method is, primarily most folks are looking at an external service. I don't think that's too surprising, 38%. Some form of looking outside in, what are people experiencing, externally to your infrastructure, whether that be in a number of cloud service providers or possibly even on-prem. And of course, customer complaints, number 2. So people telling us there's some issue going on. Those are the ones we'd prefer not to get, but we're glad to get so we know when that does happen, of course. And then some soak time and measuring from login scripts or under that 20% radar. So we ended up with a little bit of a different answer.
Yeah, right. A bit of a spread. It seems like the folks on this webinar might not be experiencing these customer complaints because they've got their stuff together.
Well, maybe this is a more proactive group that's doing some things. Let's hope.
That's great. This is
actually we had
a webinar like this, so yeah.
We can, and hopefully they'll share some of those learnings and comments in the chat.
Great.
From the audience, 48% said measurement from log and script. So they're doing a lot of their own proactive measurement. And then next was online monitoring tools at 28%. And then SOAK, and last was actually customer complaints. So maybe there's a trend there. I know I can draw a correlation quite that strongly, but we can hope that's the case.
Nice. All right.
Great. Let's jump to our next poll. And I will open our next one. Let's see here. I'll make sure I do the right one here. There we go. So who is primarily responsible for assessing and implementing reliability improvements? So it's not any one thing on a team, right? I mean, it can be anywhere from the infrastructure to the operations to the design to all parts of it, but does somebody own it? And please, audience, jump in. We've got that poll up and active going as well. Of course, SRE, relatively new role. Many organizations are starting to or have formed those roles, either informally or formally, thanks to Google kind of setting that pattern with the SRE book and sharing some of their insights. But it's been out for a while now, too. So I think we're seeing more activity in that. So great.
Okay. Another question in the chat for folks. How many of you have the title SRE somewhere in your organization? I think that'd be an interesting to try and figure out.
Love
All right. So you want to close the poll?
Yep. Okay. So closing that poll, and we'll share our results and see how that compares. So senior test engineers, very close to software developers. So that nice symbiotic relationship between the two. 24% of software architects, which means to me designing it in, right? And SREs, 12%. I think that reflects this newness of that role. Now on our poll, it was pretty similar to that. Actually, SREs were a bit higher, 26%. Senior test engineers was way down. So we have some interesting differences in the data. Of course, a smaller sampling that we're getting here from the audience. So let's jump to our next one if you're ready, Sam.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Great, because I want to help us. This is all to tee up our conversation we're going to have with our panel here. So when are most application reliability performance issues found? During testing, development testing, during long SOAK test runs, or in production. We do have that. I can just imagine what we're going to see. So please jump on that poll now. We'd love to see your insights.
Our goal now is to make sure that your numbers, audience, make sure your numbers do not match up with what we've already got in our database.
Yeah, we can't have one. We can't have an outlier. All three have to be a little different. So we're getting responses. Thanks everybody for jumping in. Appreciate you sharing your experience, your opinion with us. So we'll close that down, going once, going twice.
And I'm not seeing anyone responding to who's got the SRE titles in their company. So I'm going to guess that means that none of you in chat have anybody titled SRE in your organization. So that's going to be my operating assumption until you correct me, which I'm looking for you.
Okay. Well, steer us straight, right? If that's not the case.
Exactly.
Okay. I've closed that poll, Sam. So where most application reliability and performance issues found in production by far. Right, 78%. This is from our poll that we ran. Similar, not quite as strong, 43% said from this audience. So weren't quite as heavily. They indicated more were found, 33% were found during development and testing than we saw from our broader poll versus we're 9%. So I guess in the broader population, more people see them in production. And again, that may be a bias just from our audience who's here to talk about this topic.
More advanced.
Our polls were done in sort of the wild, the much broader audience. So I think that sets up our conversation, Sam, with our panel that you're hosting today. And let's jump right to that.
I think so too. Absolutely. Right. So, Mitch, I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask our other panelists if they would to please turn on their cameras. I see them lighting up now, which is fantastic. And so I've been asking the folks on the chat, hey, we've got these panelists here. They're smart folks who know what they're talking about. Engage with them and ask questions and give your advice. So before they do that, though, who are you? So, Bruno, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Sam. Good to see all of you and look forward to the conversation. My name is Bruno. I'm one of the founding members of a company called Sumo Logic. I'm head of strategy. I've been in the roles of head of product here and head of solutions for the last 10, 11 years that the company's been around. And I really personally care about reliability. We are a SaaS service, and we deliver the one service, one product to our customers. And we inside Sumo talk a lot about this topic and how we serve our customers. So I look forward to hearing from the other panelists about their opinions on this.
Awesome. Thank you, Bruno. Jane, you are next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jane Grohl. I'm CEO of the DevOps Institute. We're a professional member association whose mission is to advance the human elements of DevOps. We're also a certification authority, 8 certifications around DevOps topics, including 2 for SRE Foundation and SRE practitioner. This is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. Coming from the operational space. So I'm very, very excited about the conversation today.
Wonderful. And we're happy to have you. It's great to see you again. Thank you. And last but not least, Leo, introduce yourself, please.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to our esteemed attendees today. My name is Leo Vasalou, and as a former IT ops and infrastructure practitioner, I still carry battle scars to this day, which is probably part of the reason why I now work to evangelize DevOps and SRE principles through activities such as teaching the correct way to visualize data or working with fine partners on this call to publish our annual site reliability engineering report. So again, awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Yeah, and we've got a link to that report. It's one of the things that inspired this panel was the great work that Catchpoint, our partner Catchpoint, and DevOps Institute worked on together to create this free to be an SRE survey that they did, which is great. So let's dive into the topics here. Folks in the chat, folks on the panel, the big question here is, if customer loyalty is important and performance is linked to it, what does reliability mean to your business, right? We saw that thing with Facebook when Facebook was down and WhatsApp got 7 million new users. That is a big impact, right? And the reliability of Facebook, 7 million, that's a big number. So what does the reliability mean to your business or the business of the people that you are helping or working with on a daily basis? I'm going to start with, Jane just came back, so I won't start with her. I'll start with Leo. Leo, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you. Well, first, I find the term reliability to be powerful because it is an encapsulating concept. Excuse me, it encapsulates concepts such as availability, performance, capacity, a new way to release code, communicate, collaborate, and focus on the end user, to name just a few. And for us here at Catchpoint, being a company that helps other companies deliver on their promises and outcomes through the form of distributed monitoring and active observability, what we have found is there are certain predispositions and beliefs that have surfaced amongst all others, which actually alter whether IT and business align on the right way to produce and deliver reliable services in the first place. And those beliefs are the internet is your new network, the cloud is your new data center, third-party services like CDNs and DNS are your new racks and cabinets, and slow performance is the new unavailable. So to get to the essence of the question, what does reliability mean for us? It means a bi-directional conversation to help shape those belief factors in a way that helps IT and business align to hopefully no longer lead to the essence of the problem statement, which you opened this session with, which is a feeling of loss of visibility and control. That's the shortest way I can answer that question.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Great, Leo. I love that. So let's pass it over to Mitch. Mitch, what are your thoughts on this? What does reliability mean to your business or the businesses of the folks that you're working with?
Well, I think number one, it all starts with the why, which is we're moving to digital engagement, digital transactions, digital experiences with our customers, employees, and partners. So guess what? Reliability of that is number one. And we all live in a world where whether it's on our phones or in a browser, whatever it might be. We just expect it to be there. It's sort of like air. We think our internet service should always work, and we think that website or that app or whatever it might be should be there. So I think one of the reasons why SRE has become so important and why it's elevated in stature is that it isn't just tossing it over the fence or the wall anymore to operations and just hope they can keep it up, keep the system up and running. We have an entire stack that's all software. We have service providers spread across multiple clouds, single clouds, private data centers, whatever it might be. And this idea of, and the environment's also continually changing. Nothing is static, right? We don't control when AWS or this partner or Red Hat or whoever might be might make a change to an infrastructure. So we have to have the ability to be proactive as well as look for opportunities to improve. So I think it's part of this continuous improvement effort about how we run that part of our business, just like we would quality in a product.
Yeah, I think the idea of continuous, I'm writing that down because I think that's really a very critical part of reliability. It's not something that you achieve and then you're done because everything is changing.
They call it continuous, right?
Right, exactly. Because all this stuff is changing. All the parameters are changing. The services that you depend on, like Leo was talking about, all those are changing. The developers are changing everything all the time. It's like the butterfly effect. There's something going on, some other network way far away, and that's going to end up causing cascading problems into your service. They're unknown unknowns. How are you going to find out about them? I love that. All right, awesome. Jane, your internet seems to be holding for the moment. Let me ask you.
It does. So reliability. Yeah, I'm having a little reliability issue here. So I think it's on purpose, but that's a different story. I think we're looking at it from a very inside out as opposed to an outside in perspective, meaning we have to think about humans and their tolerance for unreliability or for poor performance. In an app environment these days, the consumption of service, whether it's internally in a business or it's externally through all these apps, if this one isn't performing well, there's a whole bunch of others out there that potentially can. So we have to understand that reliability is the only thing that matters to your end user, right? And even when things go wrong, you can still achieve customer satisfaction in terms of how you respond to that. But I think we have to acknowledge that humans, we're in an instant gratification society right now. Technology has enabled that. And so it becomes our primary mission to make sure not only are they reliable, but that they're performing and delivering the value that we're hoping that the end user will perceive. So it has to be looked at from the outside in, which is one of the things I like about observability. It's looking at from the outside in instead of the green, amber, red that we're used to in the past.
The watermelon metrics, right? I'm sure Leo's got something to say about all the watermelon metrics, right? Right on. Okay, well, I agree with that, Jane. I love that you bring it back to humans. It's kind of funny at the Sumo Logic. I'm in a conference room. The conference room name is Human.
Human. Yay!
I'm in the human conference room here at our office in Sumo Logic, which is pretty cool. Humans are an important part of the stack for sure. And having a system that is resilient and that has people who are focused on trying to help make that system more resilient and more reliable is critical because the system's not going to fix itself. Right. Bruno, your thoughts on this? What does reliability mean to your business? And when I say your business, it could be your business or it could be businesses that you've affected with some of the work that you've done.
Well, these for us are very, very tightly intertwined, right? We are in the business of helping our customers deliver reliable applications, cloud or otherwise. And our business is such that, we are used for monitoring reliability. We're used for troubleshooting issues, resolving root causes, alerting the right individuals, and all of that. And so that's the business that we're in for our customers. So reliability is everything because all day long we think about how do we help our customers make their systems more reliable, delight their own customers, and so on. However, reliability from the inside out here is also extremely important because we are a SaaS service. ourselves. We are a multi-tenant SaaS service, meaning when our customers use us to operate and manage their mission-critical applications and services, if we have an issue ourselves, if we have a problem in our backend system, in a multi-tenant fashion, we impact our customers. And if we impact our customers, they are running blind, which means they cannot manage their mission-critical applications and services. So for us, reliability is this double, thick sandwich that we have to think about very much from the bottom up, and are we delivering our own system as reliable, and how do we then also help our customers build better capabilities to make reliability for their own customers excellent, right? And one of the reasons why our first core value for our culture, we have 5 core values, is we are in it with our customers, is very much because of this notion that we can never let go of reliability, because we have to treat that as priority 0, because if we are not reliable, our customers are running blind, right? And so we very much think about this as one of the most important aspects of our business. It is more important than any one feature, anything we deliver, and we essentially have a maniacal focus on reliability.
Nice. Yeah, and that is very important, and we're going to get into, I think, our next topic is, how do you measure that reliability? What's the way that you understand what it is that you're delivering? And another topic that we will touch on is, how do you achieve it, right? And so measuring it and achieving it are intertwined. But let's touch on the how do you measure it first. Leo, I'm going to start with you this time.
Sounds like a plan. So how do we at Catchpoint measure reliability? How do we monitor our monitors, if I were to put it another way, right? So we have this saying here, it's like, there is no customer experience if it can't actually reach the customer. And we ask, what good is a brightly burning sun if its rays cannot reach you on the beach on a cloudy, stormy day, right? What good is a highly available, highly performant cloud if those services and apps can't reach your users where they are in the world? And to previous comments about some of the belief factors that we have to manage bias around. But when I think about measuring reliability, there are a couple of characteristics, at least for Catchpoint, when we talk about distributed monitoring and active observations. One is, for us, it will be distributed. It will be in real time, and we have to do it in a way that fosters communications and collaborations rather than this idea of the finger pointing in the war rooms. And from a slight technical perspective, we'll do that both actively and via real user telemetry. But for me, none of those previous bullets have context unless they're anchored around what is important to the business. And I'm going to go back to that previous slide that showed, I believe it was 27% come in via customer complaints.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of astonishes me, to be perfectly honest with you, that over 1/4 or over 1/4 of the measurements come in via customer complaints. And so I guess to an extent, our customer complaints are one of the stats that we look at. NPS is another metric that we track, but ultimately in the form of what the business cares about, again, supporting other businesses achieving their outcomes, will be anchored to things like our renewal retention rate and new logo acquisition. So again, those previous bullets, distribution, real-time, comms and collaboration, actual tech of active and real user measurements mean absolutely nothing unless we anchor it to what's important to the business.
Right. Very good. Awesome. All right, Jane, what are your thoughts? How are folks measuring their reliability out there? What are they doing to try and get this done?
Well, I think there's a hyper focus on MTTR, and there's always been a hyper focus on MTTR, which means something breaks and how long does it take us to to repair it. And I know there's a lot of history there. I would love to see more measurement of mean time between incidents, right? So that we could see what the reliability actually is and how long it takes. Incidents will occur, we know that, but mean time between incidents. And I also think that from a business outcome, we should be looking at reliability from business performance. So I don't know that we do that enough, but we look at how many transactions, we look at, what was the success rate of using of the application, how did that impact business? And then finally, I love observability. And regardless of like how things are observed, I love the concept of observing. I think it's a very, very powerful message that says, look at, right? Because in the past, I come from operations. In the past, that red, green, amber, I didn't do it in the right order, but you know what I mean. Was kind of like, what were we measuring? Were we measuring component level, or maybe we were measuring capacity? And all of those are really important, but we weren't necessarily observing the use of the application, right? How the application was succeeding. If you're an insurance company, you want to see how many claims went through or how many claims were up. There's a lot of business metrics that I think play into reliability. So just to sum, I think technically we need to kind of move away a little bit from MTTR. It's important, but I don't think it's the primary measurement. I'd love to see more of a time measurement and a quality measurement. And then I think we need to tie business transactions or business use of the application to measure reliability. I may think my internet's reliable right now, and I bet you all of you would think it isn't.
Well, we've heard your whole answer, so far we're good. But that's interesting. I wonder if the concept.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah, sorry. I wonder if the concept though of service level objectives and agreements, does that help to move that conversation up a level to the realm of human beings, to the realm of expectations and things that can actually be done? And does that help you measure reliability in a more abstract and more useful, potentially useful way for your business? Is that something that you're seeing?
I'll just throw out real fast, and I'd be really interested in everybody else's perspectives. I also love SLOs and error budgets as key principles behind SRE, because first of all, they're self-organizing, and second of all, you don't need two lawyers sitting across a table at each other trying to negotiate a service level agreement. Because again, service level agreements historically have always been, here's how we'll respond if something breaks, as opposed to here's what our uptime will be, here's what our capacity will be. So we've kind of shifted that. So I love service level objectives because I think it takes that away and really puts the onus on the teams, SRE development, DevOps teams, to make those SLOs a reality.
And to make them reasonable for the business, right?
Absolutely.
And to understand that these are things that you can iterate on and improve. I love all of that stuff. That's fantastic. Let's see. I'm going to go to Bruno next. Bruno, what are your thoughts on this? How do you measure reliability? What are we seeing inside of our base?
Yeah, so, it really depends. Like there's a lot of, when I look at our business, what we do for our customers are on a spectrum, right? Very sophisticated, and, on that level of maturity, some are not as sophisticated. Service level agreements and objectives and indicators, are a current topic. Many of our sort of more sophisticated customers leverage service level objectives. But I want to kind of take a step back and kind of look at the internal way that we measure this stuff as well. What gets measured gets improved. That's pretty much the mantra that we follow here. And when we measure things to help deliver a reliable service to our customers, we have sort of graduated over the years and improved, gone from sort of like, assembly level, service level, specific indicators to an outside-in view of what actually matters to our customers, right? Even though we might still measure all of these sort of sub-component, each team is measuring their own KPIs and SLIs and SLOs. What gets alerted on is the things that impact the customers, right? We measure things that matter to our customers, like our search performance, right? We measure search failure rate. We measure data ingest latency and things like that. But then all of these things underneath might still be measured they might be alerted, they might not be alerted on if they don't impact customers at a high level. We might not need to wake up people in the middle of the night for some of those, but they all get measured, get tracked, get improved over time, which ultimately drives a better outcome for our customers. And many of our customers do it in a very similar way. And some of them probably do it even in a more sophisticated way than we do, even using our own platform, which is what we use internally. But what I hear from our customers is that primarily the market's shifting towards measuring the customer-facing impact. How is the customer experiencing what I'm serving to them? Is this going to impact their satisfaction? And that is what people are starting to get focused on alerting on and responding to.
It makes perfect sense. Mitch, we have not heard from you on this topic yet. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing out there when you're talking to people?
Well, I won't repeat the emphasis around customer experience. I do think that's spot on. And remember that we live in a world of more than up and down, black and white, or even 3 levels of granularity. I mean, a bad experience can be, a 10-second response time as opposed to under 2 seconds, something like that. I think the thing that I see the emerging trend is not just reliability, but resilience of software and infrastructure. So the idea that when we see something happen, there's an action that's taken. We scale up more instances of Kubernetes clusters. It's restarting things that might be failing, and we notify someone if we need to do some research into underlying cause. So we live in a world, software isn't just the software we build, it's the software used to operate what we build. And so that means we can automate a lot of that resiliency. So easily said, that can be a challenge from where you are to get to that place. But one of the things that can help is this idea of SRE roles and SLOs and things like that. So you're constantly shifting where the bottleneck is that you're working on next in that continuous improvement process. Rather than making it one thing, we want 3 nines on blah. Well, I'm sorry, that may not be a great customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like a really the continuous improvement part of it. That's challenging to continually make it more and more resilient, more and more reliable, especially in the face of all that change that we were just talking about earlier. The change coming from outside, inside, wherever, and you're not necessarily the one who's architecting those changes. You're not saying, "Okay, I'd like you to go make these changes now." They're just like, "Hey, we just made this change. Deal with it."
Mm-hmm.
And Sam, is it okay to add a piece of context here?
Absolutely.
Mitch talked the word continuous, and then Bruno talked about kind of the shift to the experience perspective. And one of the insights here that I recall vividly when we were just, we talked with our prospects, customers, and do the research report like we mentioned, but 50% of the data from this year's report said that they continually refine their SLOs. And one of the insights that doesn't immediately jump off the page at you, but if you go back and look at the report, the 2 answers that contained the word easy were the 2 least selected answers. And I just wonder if it has to do with the concept of continual, as well as the shift to the experience perspective as well. I just thought it was just a fascinating insight to add color to the previous comment. So hopefully that helped.
Yeah, excellent. I love it. That's great. Yeah, there's a link in the deck here, folks, when we're almost at the end, to get this report that Leo was talking about, that Leo and Jane at the DOI put together. It's very interesting, fantastic information. All right. So this is fantastic. Let's get on to the next one. So how do you achieve this? And so one of the things that I've, heard folks talking about is the idea now that we're digital service brokers. There's infrastructure that you don't own that you're responsible for. There are applications that you don't own that you're responsible for. There are third-party services that are tied into the applications that you don't own that you also don't own. And how do you achieve, if those have a 3 nines sort of availability, how do you make sure that how do you do better than that? How do you go faster than the wind when you're sailing, right? So how do you achieve that reliability? I'm going to start, this time I'll start with Mitch.
Great. Well, I think number one, you need not just knowledge, but you need context and data. So starting there, I mean, you can obviously be overrun by data. So it's a matter of where do you start first? There's the idea of constraint-based engineering, constraint-based manufacturing. Go to the bottleneck. Start prioritizing where your biggest issues that are going to make the biggest impact, that actually can have a positive outcome, not just fix the bottleneck, but it doesn't improve the service. So that's part of that continuous improvement process. I think the other is, if you step back a minute, looking at it more systemically and realizing that when we have service issues, whatever they may be, it isn't just a customer experience that might be impacted. It may be a partner's ability to deliver their service, or vice versa. It may be a customer's ability to deliver a service to their customers. So when you think about where to work on reliability and where to improve it most, is ultimately that's what matters to the business. I mean, I can go over here and improve something and make this, half a second faster, but if it isn't going to have a net effect that's going to impact something we're going to ultimately matter to the business, I probably want to shift what I want to work on. So I think that I would just contribute as a beginning thought, that constraint-based methodology. Look for the bottleneck and go work on the bottleneck first, because anything you do before it is going to hit the bottleneck. Anything after is going to get starved until the bottleneck is fixed.
And guess what? You will always find another bottleneck.
There's always another bottleneck.
There's always another bottleneck. Awesome. All right, thank you. Let's go to Bruno. Bruno, what are your thoughts on this? How do we achieve reliability, or how do we recommend folks achieve reliability?
So I agree with what Mitch was saying there, but I'll just add a couple of things that I think is really important. I was having this conversation with our chief development officer just the other day. One of the aspects that I think it's really important to achieving reliability is, besides data, besides the fact that, sort of in this ever-changing, fast, rapid rate of change world of new code shows up in production applications, continuously, and there is a constant influx of new data types and data sets and data schemas and all that stuff that you have to keep up on, and you need, an analytical approach to actually be able to understand what this data is telling you. I think the other aspect of what's really important in achieving reliability is the process. There is the religion about that you believe in reliability, right? Religion about getting the right data and being able to measure things, detect things, fix things. But you also have to have the religion about the process. And that really means setting up the culture that forces you and make sure that the teams are committed to it, that there's an ongoing process of improvement, that you're looking at outcomes of your reliability measurement and processes and improvements, that you're constantly learning from what you're finding. You are continuously improving what is happening inside of your processes, inside of your development, inside of your application. And that is something that has to become a mechanical exercise that people participate in, that is not just called on, hey, we had an issue, let's go get together and talk about a postmortem. It is something that needs to be reviewed and constantly improved. And so data coupled with analytical approach, coupled with a religion about the process, I think is what gets you to ultimately have a continuously reliable system and application.
Yeah, there are some really great comments in the chat as well about this. I'll definitely underscore the idea of continuous. And the folks in the audience, what continuous improvement means is that you don't have to be perfect today, and you don't have to be ashamed of where you are today. You just have to know where you are, and you have to know where you'd like to be. And so that's a very empowering thing for teams to hear, and for teams to if you can inculcate that and make that part of their way of thinking about solving the problems, you've hit a growth mindset inflection point. And now it's not about hiding the problems, it's about solving the problems, which is exactly where you want people to be, right? So that's fantastic. Let's see, Leo, I see you smiling there. So please share what you're smiling about.
Well, I'm going to hope that my following comments don't upset Bruno and other fellow process people.
Ooh, good. I love it. This is great.
I'll start by suggesting that we've never known IT technologists to be bound by traditional definitions of things.
Mhm.
But to your previous comments, team, if it does start with an innate desire to solve complex problems, right, that is the result, then I would just kindly suggest that some amount of flexibility and improv for DevOps, SREs, IT strategists, and the like to have some type of wiggle room to maybe try to solve those problems in their own way to inspire creativity. That's got to be a major driver. And I'd say maybe other drivers, probably especially in this day and age, ensuring work-life balance, the culture aspect, training, learning, reward, recognition aspects, but ultimately inspiring people to foster their desire to solve those complex problems with a little bit of freedom and improv to do so in their own way. So hopefully it doesn't upset the process people too much.
Yeah, I mean, what you brought up something that's really interesting, and I just put a note in the chat for folks. There's a wonderful book called Team Topologies that talks about cognitive load for teams, and how do you help make people's work, help them understand what the impact that they're going to have, help organize that work in a way that allows them to focus on getting real work done as opposed to just churning all the time around things that don't really matter. And it's an incredibly important part. Somebody else in the chat, Colin, said, it's really about culture and process. It starts with that culture and process. So I don't know, Bruno, did you want to respond to that? Do you want to have a little?
Sounds like a challenge to me.
Happy to. The thing is, like, I'm not a process person myself, right? But I do, when I observe kind of what we do here and what our best customers do, that process of constant learning and understanding what was happening, right? Because keep in mind, the data that we talk about here, like data is key in understanding these signals, but the process itself produces data, produces, boils down all of this raw data about what's happening into insights, which might determine patterns, which can then be solved in a way. It's a constant feedback loop of not just the application data that comes in, but also the data that's generated by humans in the process who care about what they're delivering, right? And so, I am not you won't find me being I'm not an ITIL guy or anything like that. And in fact, if you ask people that work with me, I am very much an ad hoc kind of guy, but I do see kind of that the best teams out there, including our own, actually have to kind of become very much committed to doing this thing in a repeatable manner that uncovers things that matter to ultimately drive it. So, I think it's a combination. You need creativity and you need to be able to be flexible, but at the same time, some aspect of this is also important.
And I think a key point, we've talked on this, I keep putting it in the chat over and over again, continuous improvement. And the other one is capability of process, is one that my colleague Colin always talks about. Whatever you have, if you've got it in a state, I'm going to use the as code sort of umbrella here. If you've got it as code, that process, then you can iterate on it. And as long as everyone has input and visibility into the process and they understand the outcome from that process, then as your environment changes and your code changes, those are two separate changes that now you need to account for. But if you can iterate on your pipeline and iterate on your observability and iterate on your operations the same way you iterate on your code, then you can accommodate those changes that you're finding in these different areas over time. And as long as you're measuring the outcomes, then you can be notified that the changes are required. So I think it's all terribly related, which is good and bad. It's kind of messy. Jane, what are your thoughts?
I was going to say, as somebody who comes from the ITIL space a long time ago, we tried having traditional process, right? We tried to do the command and control processes within IT for incident management and change management, and companies spent a lot of money doing that. But they found out that For IT in particular, to Leo's point, to Bruno's point, we're not traditionalists, right? But one of the really nice things that's happening today, and I think it's seeding itself little by little, is you achieve reliability by having shared accountabilities, by having SREs that are also have an engineering mentality. You bring in SRE early. Getty brought up something about, you can't have SRE as an afterthought or the traditional approach of wait on the other side of operations and see what flies over the fence, right? So being able to not only shift left, but making operations a key part of the development process, having the development teams and the SRE teams sharing their success factors, right? It's not, our problem is we've had so many different processes between the different teams, and we didn't speak the same language and we didn't use the same tools. So developers were starting agile, operations was doing ITIL, and it ended up a bit of a mess. So with SRE, the goal is self-organization. We want these teams to be able to achieve reliability together. We want them to share common vocabulary. We want them to start early on. And we want them to use the same metrics and look at the same data. And then again, celebrate together. Or if something breaches, right? Because remember, they're given the SLOs. They're not told how to do it. They're not given strict process, right? They're given oversight. But the goal is, here's your error budget. Here's your SLOs. Go ahead and achieve it.
How many hamsters do you need to achieve that reliability? That's the, how many hamsters do you need?
And it isn't a one-to-one. It's not always a one SRE to one development team. But again, we're moving in that direction. We're moving into self-organizing systems because humans are smart. And humans want automation because we want to get rid of the
because we're lazy.
Yeah, we want to get rid of the toil. We want to be able to enable it. We were so busy automating everybody else, we kind of forgot to automate ourselves. And I think we're kind of catching up on that. But I would say you achieve reliability through, again, great people, great process, great automation, but mostly because we have humans that are creative, that have a shared accountability, and they're getting there together. And that's a really big shift. That's the early days of IT, but that's a really big shift for a lot of large organizations.
And you mentioned great across a lot of characteristics there. And again, for the audience, I want to just put out there that you don't have to start great.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the goal of experimentation I wouldn't start looking at a business critical application until you've experimented, but you're right. Continuous improvement, continual improvement is something that, as long as you are committed to it, is something that you can start. That's why we start with MVPs, right? Minimum viable products, so that we can learn from our customers and from each other and from the automation what to do.
Yeah, Gene Kim, who's a pretty well-known person in the DevOps space, has a quote that I love to repeat, which is, the quality of the daily work is less important than the improvement in the quality of the daily work, which is, that's it. That's the simplest way of saying what we've been saying. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slide. We have 10 minutes left. This is a great conversation, and I love hearing from all the folks in the chat with things that you have to say. Thank you for that. Human factors, team alignment, and burnout. We've talked a little bit about this already, but I think it's a pretty big topic. And Jane, I wouldn't be me if I didn't ask you to talk about the humans first. So do you have anything else that you wanted to share about that topic? How do you help folks with that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think that, whether you're a software engineer, whether you're an operations person, SRE is opening up new paths. And I think that as a human, I can't make you continuously learn. I can't train you. I can give you the resources, but it's your brain that has to be committed to the learning process, and it's your brain that has to internalize it. So it's two ways, right? People have to really, and it's great. Because there's that word again. But no, it's seriously great because we're in an environment that's moving so fast that your opportunity to continuously learn is there in a lot of different ways, whether it's formal training or whether it's just in time or peer-to-peer. So I think the human factors have to be there, and there has to be a willingness to do that. And teams need to be more diversified on the traditional level of diversity and inclusion, but also in terms of roles. Right, where the agile teams are no longer only developers and maybe a few QA. I think the bigger issue here is burnout, right? I think that, there's a lot of pressure on IT professionals today to learn everything about everything, because we talk about full stack and the shelf life of your skills is really short right now because something new is coming up and whatever. And so I think we need to be very sensitive to managing change in terms of, you can't go too slow, but if you go too fast, it's going to really be a very, very serious burnout issue. And I think that pressure, we talk about T-shaping, right? Have a core competency supplemented with just enough knowledge about other stuff so that you don't have to be an expert at everything. That's why low code, no code is so important.
Yeah.
I said a lot in that very short period of time, so I figured I'd just throw that out there.
No, but I mean, that's exactly right? We talk about continuous improvement and everyone's always keen to get the next shiny object. But what stack is the most important stack in your company? It's your people stack, right? They need to be skilled and they need to be trained up and they need to feel comfortable and confident helping you run your business. Otherwise, everyone's just in panic mode the whole time. Awesome. All right. Let's see. Bruno, I'm going to ask you to go next.
Thanks, Em. So burnout is real. In preparation for this, spent some time chatting with some of our burnt out people to just kind of understand kind of what they're going through. I happen to not be on rotation and on call. I kind of squeaked out of that responsibility a while ago, but it's real. And when I look at Sumo Logic and our own internal processes for reliability and on call and all of that, we've evolved them over time quite a bit. Not just because we've grown as a company and we have a larger team and more services and all of that, and we have presence around the world. We evolved them because we're trying to help individuals not burn out and help the humans sort of on the line of fire really deal with these issues. And some of the things that I've spoken with our people who had our reliability. Some of the things that we do are really kind of think thoughtfully about the rotational aspects of this process, right? First, I talked about culture earlier. Culture is important because when you operate and work in a culture where reliability is important, where it's the core value number one, as it is at Sumo Logic, because we all believe it, it actually helps people be more positive about hard work around these issues, helps them understand the reason why we're doing these things, helps them buy in. And when you have people who buy in, they spend less time thinking about how they're annoyed by these things that happen in the middle of the night. They spend more time thinking about how they're proud of achieving and helping and doing all of that stuff. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, we had to kind of go around the world, around the clock, right? And 12/7 is a lot better than 24/7, right? And that's why we have follow the sun teams that can kind of hand off to each other. And as things kind of hand off, there's a team that are responsible during daylight times rather than in the middle of the night or all night. And then we have separated responsibilities as well, where we have this role we call IRC, or Incident Response Coordinator, sort of somebody with a high capacity to discern who really needs to be woken up for dealing with this issue, right? They're there to assess the situation. They're not there to fix it. They're assessing the situation. They are the best suited to figure out who needs to jump into the process. They delegate that stuff to individual teams who own specific assemblies. And even those teams have separate level of rotation, right? They are sort of once a week, they are responsible for end-to-end ownership of their assembly, but then the rest of the time they're not, right? So we've spent a lot of time trying to avoid burnout, but I think it's both kind of how you organize and what culture you instill that helps you solve some of those human issues.
Nice. Thank you, Bruno. All right, Leo, I'm going to go to you next, and I'm going to close with Mitch.
All right, looking at the time here, I'll kind of take a bit of an easy answer and say Jane, Bruno did a nice job. I don't know what critical insights I could offer there, except maybe just to augment with a couple of nuggets leading to one thought. So I think it was like half of the SREs said, or let me say it like this, half of the SREs said that they felt like 25% or less of their work was toil, and then the other half said they felt 25% or more was toil, and then half said that they spend 20% or less time on call, and then 20% or more time on call. So just looking at this team alignment here, and just wondering if maybe because what we saw is like the size of the organization affected whether or not orgs were structured like decentralized versus centralized. And so maybe as orgs get larger, the only thing I could think to say is that maybe there's an opportunity to reevaluate or reconsolidate, like you talk about, like shift switching, shift rotations, adjusting to tactfully centralize some of those capabilities to try to reduce some of those toil activities like being on call, and ultimately reducing this concept of burnout. But it is a very real problem, especially, people are working from home, and a lot of the interactions are exclusively digital these days. But otherwise, I think Jane Bruno captured the essence very nicely.
And is that I was looking for recall on a statistic from Google, the SRE sort of, they're looking for the SREs to spend 50% or more of their time automating or leaning out process. Is that the statistic? Right?
Yeah, you'd be referring.
Sorry, Leo.
Yep. Oh, no, quite all right. Yeah, you're right, referring to the 50-50 split, with the 50% of ops, no more than a quarter of that, performing on-call function. So spot on.
Right. And so all that, really, if you think about it, all that is just about continuous improvement. So Google said, I'm going to allocate 50% of folks' time. It's not just the 80-20 where they say 20% or in one day a week they get to work on a special project. This is half of your waking hours at work. Not that you're sleeping at work, but half of your hours at work, let me just say it that way, should be spent improving the way the work happens, which is pretty impressive. And you're going to end up with a pretty shiny machine after a little while, right?
And the distinction between burnout versus toil is pretty important, because toil sometimes can be just the mental activator that you do in between large projects. It doesn't necessarily lead to burnout, and that's why that distinction is so critical. So absolutely.
Nice. All right. All right, Mitch, bring it home, man.
Boy, if we could eliminate the word toil from our work, I think there's a lot of improvements, a lot of gains we would make. So as I look at the data around the Great Resignation, a lot of times data is reported as the reasons are, no commute, more time with family, et cetera, et cetera. If you really pull down and look below the data, what you really find is people are looking for meaning and alignment in their life, right? It isn't balance. I think we're past the balance argument. We've all said, well, I want balance between work and... No, you don't. Yes, you'd like more time at home. What you really want is work that fits with your values, with your life, with what you like to do. Lots of factors in what we're seeing. And so I think one of the things that attracts people to work is when they feel like they're making a difference. I'm not just body thrown at the problem. Am I the 52nd body thrown at this problem? Okay, probably not going to make a difference. That's the toil category. So this might fall whether you're making your own personal decision, or maybe it's really for us as leaders in organizations, is that's what matters to people. And it isn't, you want to keep people around and engaged. We'll give them meaningful work, give them meaningful things to do. That can mean different things for different people. But I think that's the era we're in, is meaning and alignment, and balance is old stuff.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way of talking about it. I was just having that conversation last week, as a matter of fact, with a personal friend of mine, and that's you've hit something I think very important. Thank you for that. So I want to call this to a close. I really wanted to thank the folks in the chat who leaned in with us today and shared some stuff around what you're going through or what your thoughts are. I want to thank our panelists for joining us as well, Jane and Leo. This is a slide here with the link to the report free to be an SRE, the 2021 SRE report, which I think was one of the better reads I'd had around this topic. So I definitely recommend you go and take a look. I want to thank Bruno and Mitch as well for constantly providing all the updates and the input on all the stuff that you both know about. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. And we have another one of these on, I believe it's December 6th, to talk about DevOps trends and New Year's resolutions. So make sure you look for that one, DevOps Insight Forum on Techstrong. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
December 5th.
December 5th. Thank you.
Sorry,
Mitch.
6th.
Everyone,
December
thanks.
6th. I was right. All right. We're all learning.
Thank you, team.